Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. I'm Jet. That is Sap. And, man, we talk about this guy every single week, Sap. And he's making the news for some fight, some slight, something or another. Never for anything good, which is funny because he's one of the best players I've ever seen. Kevin Durant, doing the media rounds, not playing, but doing the media rounds as he was on the $1 million worth of game podcast. That's DOLLAZ, $1 million worth of game podcast. I don't know if you've heard of that one, Sap. But
no, there's 800,000. There's 800,000 or 900,000 podcasts in the United States right now. So I missed that one. I don't generally listen to podcasts. I'm still someone who likes terrestrial radio. I know I'm old and all of that stuff. I like the structure of radio, but here we are doing a podcast. So we try to bring a little radio feel to the podcast with some structure. We just don't, go on hopefully for an hour talking about the same thing. But Kevin Durant, he does more podcasts than us, whether he's hosting one or as a guest. And you know what the amazing thing about Kevin Durant is, and I don't want to step on your toes here, Jeff, but
No.
In the last 700 days, he's played 26 games, right? In the last 700 days, 26
about as many
games.
As me.
Right, yeah. I mean, we've done more podcasts in the last 2 weeks than Durant's played games in the last 700 days. 26 games. In 6 of those 26 games, he hasn't finished them. Obviously got hurt in 2 games in the finals against Toronto. I believe he got hurt against, Portland in the conference finals. I forget exactly which games. But out of the 26 games, he's only finished 20 of them. It almost feels like a bad relief pitcher that gets pulled in the 9th inning. And again, over the weekend, he got hurt, 4 minutes into the game. So, but yet he's got plenty of time to go on podcasts and troll, because that's exactly what he does all the time.
Yeah. Before I get into it real quick, it goes, the NBA does not want the Nets to win because this sets a really bad precedent where the guys have basically Durant, Kyrie, and Harden have taken the regular season off. More so Durant and Kyrie. Harden's been relatively durable for Brooklyn, and they're presumably going to be fully healthy for the playoffs. If what I think is going to happen is they're going to just rip through the Eastern Conference. We'll see.
See,
I hope they don't.
I don't. We disagree on that because they've only played 7 games together so far. I don't know how many more they're going to play by the time the playoffs come. It does mean something. Now, they're phenomenal players and their games fit, because they can all create off the dribble. They can all shoot. They work well together, at least the 7 games we've been able to see them play, but there's just not enough of a foundation there. And I think Philadelphia and Milwaukee are real contenders, but we'll see how this plays out in the postseason.
But Sep, what does that say? If they're able to do that and rip through and win the title, that kills the regular season. And the NBA, how can you possibly market regular season games when you just saw the Nets basically take it off and then win the championship? That's not a good precedence to set.
No, not at all. Forget football, because football players don't miss games. There's no load management in the NFL. There's no load management in hockey. Let's say baseball. I mean, the LA Dodgers, who look like a wagon and may win 120 games this year, around the All-Star break, do they say, you know what? Let's see, Clayton Kershaw, Trevor Bauer, and one other starter. We're going to just sit those guys down for the second half of the season, or they'll pitch once a month just to stay sharp, but we'll have them ready for the postseason. That cheapens the regular season. Now you're trying to get people into the stands to watch baseball, and you've got, AAA guys pitching because you're that much better than everybody else. So that's what Brooklyn's doing. You're right. The league would like to see anybody but Brooklyn in the NBA Finals. Now, the ratings would be good, right? If you've got Brooklyn against the Lakers, that would probably be the highest rated finals, potential finals this year, although the ratings continually go down, but that's just the way it is with so many choices out there. But yeah, I mean, what does it say that 3 great players get together, play 7 games together, and then they just stampede through the playoffs? That is not a good sign. You nailed it right there, Jet.
Yeah, it's exactly what the league doesn't want to happen, and it's a copycat league, as all sports are, and so you just would see it happen more and more. It would be a nightmare for basketball. There's not a single likable thing about this Brooklyn Nets team, honestly. There's not a single likable thing. None of the players are likable. The way they formed the team wasn't likable. The way they're taking their approach to the regular season isn't likable.
No.
It's their effort on the court sometimes, because they don't play any defense, isn't that likable. So really, if you're talking about a villainous NBA team, this is the ultimate. I can't remember a team that I've despised more than this Nets team.
I mean, obviously, as a Celtic fan, you probably despise the big three in Miami, right? LeBron, Bosh, and Wade. But at least those guys showed up and played hard, right? I mean, LeBron didn't take many nights off. There were times in his second or third year where there was some sort of load management there for LeBron, but he'd maybe miss 5 games. The whole team didn't shut down for the regular season and say, we'll see you in April, May, and June, see what happens. At least they played.
I hated that team, obviously, Seth. But like you said, Brooklyn's done everything what should be characterized as the wrong way. You know, assembling the way they assemble the team, the way they're treating load management, the way they play on the court sometimes. The way that they treat the media and they treat the fans and treat everything the wrong way that you would think, and that you would teach, young athletes how to play and how to best put yourself as an example for other people. And they legitimately might win it all. And I think that would be a disastrous result for the NBA.
And the least likable of those 3 great players is certainly now Kevin Durant. Kyrie's still marvelous to watch. I just think he's kind of a kook.
Outside of Boston, he's more likable than Kevin Durant. He's the least liked in Boston, Kyrie.
Right, because, it didn't end well here. And Harden, I think there's the stink of him laying down and mailing it in and demanding a trade out of Houston, showing up to training camp looking like me, not looking like an NBA superstar. So there's the stink of that. But Durant's the guy that really irritates people now because he's so passive aggressive. He went from being someone who was so likable. I like to tell the story a lot because there's always this blowback against LeBron James. When LeBron made the decision, he became hated in a lot of areas of the NBA. Kevin Durant that same summer or the next year just tweeted out re-signing with Oklahoma City. And it was like, wow, what a difference. LeBron made a spectacle of it, whereas KD stayed where he was drafted, although he was really drafted by Seattle. We get that. But, he was staying there and he was kind of quiet about it. Then when he won that MVP in 2014, 2015, the speech he gave with his mom, I mean, it was just like, holy cow, this kid's a really good kid. And really since that point, he's gone from, good guy to bad guy. And
the old wrestling heel turn, right? The WWE
the
heel.
But is he comfortable with this?
No,
I think that's what I mean. Like
miserable.
Kobe, rest in peace. And Michael Jordan or Barry Bonds in baseball, they kind of liked it. It fueled them. Like Durant seems to like chaos, right? I think he's got some masochistic tendencies. Like he's happy when there's chaos going on, so he's fighting with Michael Rappaport on Twitter or Shannon Sharp, and now he's. And I know you want to eventually get to the point that we were going to start this with, but now he's trolling a former teammate.
Yeah, and I was, I talked about this, I think last Friday, is that they were playing, whenever they played the Sixers, this was last week, and he was not playing, and the Sixers fans were chanting KD sucks and booing him, even though he wasn't playing, and he was throwing up his hands in the air and saying, why are they does he not understand that every move he's made since he's left Oklahoma City has infuriated every NBA fan?
Yeah.
It's like there's some disconnect there. But yeah, to get to the initial point we were trying to make, because it's easy. Listen, this Nets team is they're hateable, but they're so fascinating that you kind of get lost in talking about them, because it's like all these personalities and they're doing all this weird stuff, and yet they're still brilliant on the court. It's like you could talk about them. I mean, we could literally have a Nets podcast and be able to do it as many times a week.
Absolutely.
So they are a fascinating team. But yeah, to get to the point that I wanted to start with, Sap, is that Durant was on this podcast, this $1 million worth of game podcast. You cannot say $1 million worth of game podcast without sounding extremely white if you're a white guy. I really, there's no way I can say it to make that sound cool.
No.
But he was asked who the top 5 players he's played with in his career have been. And he mentioned Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Serge Ibaka. The hosts were shocked. Shocked. They're saying, really?
Shocked, I tell you.
What? Did I leave somebody out? And they're like, yeah, you left somebody out. Turned out he left out Russell Westbrook, to which he quickly said, oh, man, I'm tripping. Yeah, of course, Russell Westbrook. How do you remember that you played with Serge Ibaka but forget that you played with Russell Westbrook?
You know when you take the SATs or some test where they give you 4 answers and one clearly doesn't belong? That's Serge Ibaka in this equation. And Serge Ibaka is a really nice player, won a championship with Toronto a couple of years ago. Kawhi Leonard loves him as a teammate, which I don't know if that's a compliment or not, because Kawhi is another guy that's out to lunch oftentimes and seems to be living in his own planet. But yeah, Serge Ibaka does not fit with those other guys. Those are all Hall of Famers. Now, obviously he's going to include his 2 current teammates, right? Kyrie Irving and James Harden. That's a done deal. He has to, unless he's
said this
really
was ranked,
trolling.
By the way,
he ranked it as Steph number 1. Yeah,
no, he ranked it as Kyrie number 1.
Well, that's absurd because, look, he has to say that. He has to say Kyrie, and those 2 guys have something going on. Kyrie and Durant, don't they almost feel like high school sophomores who, like, no one hangs out at the mall anymore, but, they're hanging around their house and they're, like, bullying people on Twitter or Instagram, and they're like,
I think they're 2
we're the
weird
peas
guys. In a pod. Yeah, 2
exactly.
Weird peas in a pod.
They're like, they understand each other. No one else understands them, and thank God for that. So I think that, you've got to mention Kyrie and James Harden first and foremost because they're your current teammates. Obviously, Steph and Klay, that's a no-brainer, right? You won 2 championships with them. Now, the 5th one, Russell Westbrook should be the guy. Russell Westbrook's an MVP. They were together 7-8 years in Oklahoma City, played with him more than he played with anyone else. But like you said, Jet, he remembered Serge Ibaka, who was a teammate in Oklahoma City, but he didn't remember his best teammate in Oklahoma City because obviously he and Russell Westbrook had a falling out. And again, here's Kevin Durant trolling once again.
So he did this on purpose in your mind?
Of course. Absolutely. He's a smart guy. See, when smart people do things like this, they're up to something. He's not a moron. Kevin Durant's a very sharp guy, as is Kyrie Irving, although Kyrie's opinion of himself is a little higher than what it should be. But nonetheless, Kevin Durant's a smart guy. You don't get to that point of being that great a basketball player by not being pretty self-aware or smart or whatever other way you want to describe him.
I don't know that he's self-aware.
He's not self-aware. You're right. I should take that back. He's not, because like you said about 5 minutes ago when they were saying KD sucks in Philadelphia, you didn't quite gather it. Like, if you're self-aware, you know exactly why they're chanting that. I think Jordan, Kobe, Barry Bonds, who were probably the 3 guys that I continue to always bring up because they just love being the man in the black hat. They were just
you can
so
be
comfortable
smart
with that.
And not self-aware. They're not mutually exclusive.
True. Right. You're right. Exactly. You nailed it, Jet. Absolutely right. But here's Kevin Durant once again. Like, how do you leave Russell Westbrook out?
Yeah. And then since they said it, he said, oh, yeah, I'll put him ahead of Klay then on the list. So his revised list is Kyrie 1, insanity, Harden 2, Steph 3, Westbrook 4, Klay 5.
Okay, can I give you my rankings of those 5 guys?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, I think we're probably going to agree on this. It's Steph, followed by Harden, followed by Westbrook, followed by Kyrie, followed by Klay. And it really hurts me to put Kyrie ahead of Klay. I love Klay. He's one of my favorite players. Kyrie's better. I mean, Kyrie's more talented. And now Klay's missed 2 years. Not that we can hold that against him. He's, blowing out his knee or his Achilles. That's really not his fault. But that's how I would rank them. I don't know how you'd rank them. I'm sure pretty close to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there's a different way to rank them if you're being honest and realistic.
No, it seems pretty sensible, right? Like Steph Curry's the best player he's ever played with. Hands down. Sorry.
Hands down. He is.
It's a fact. And I think Harden is clearly number 2. And then I would say Westbrook's clearly number 3. Now, you could flip-flop Westbrook and Harden. Harden, I think maybe there's some recency bias because Harden's still really good. And Westbrook, I think, certainly on the
Harden's
back
more
end
efficient.
of his career.
He's just more
efficient. Yeah, I mean, Westbrook can't shoot. He's a 30% three-point shooter who still likes to take a lot of threes. And then Westbrook ahead of Kyrie just because, you know what? Westbrook's there. Westbrook busts his ass on both ends of the court. And
he's accomplished more individually than Kyrie.
Won an MVP, Jet, right? Led the league in scoring, led the league in assists. Who would you rather go to battle with, Kyrie Irving or Russell Westbrook?
Russell Westbrook, please.
Well, you love Westbrook. I'm enamored with Kyrie's talent. I mean, I think he's more talented and more efficient as a basketball player. But let's put Westbrook ahead of him, and yeah, Klay's number 5, and that does pain me because I love Klay, but Kyrie's better than Klay. That seems to be a pretty easy list. And then after that, Draymond Green. Then maybe you get the Serge Ibaka. All I can tell you is Kevin Durant's played with more great players than any player I can ever remember. Just
by the way,
that list.
Yeah, leaving Draymond off instead of putting Ibaka on was also, like you said, on purpose. He doesn't like Draymond Green.
No,
we know that they don't get along.
He's played with 3 former MVPs in their prime, right? Yeah. Curry, the year before Durant went there was a unanimous MVP. He played with Westbrook the year after Durant left. Westbrook was the MVP of the league, averaging a triple-double. And now he's playing with Harden, who a couple of years ago was the MVP. He's played with 3 legitimate, superstar MVP players in their prime, not to mention Kyrie Irving, who's otherworldly talented. And, oh, by the way, Klay Thompson, who might be the second best shooter of the last 20 years behind only Steph Curry.
Yeah, all those guys are Hall of Famers, you said.
He's played with more great players than LeBron. I mean, LeBron, and I don't want to hear someone tried to tell me LeBron played with Shaq. Well, Shaq was 40 years old and about 375 pounds. He didn't play with Shaq. He played with Shaquille O'Neal or a reasonable facsimile. I mean, Wade was a great player, but I think he was a little out of his prime when LeBron was there.
The first 2 years, Wade was right in his prime.
Right in his prime, and then the last 2 years, not. Bosh is not as good as these 5 guys that Durant played with. Anthony Davis, Anthony Davis would probably be in the same range as maybe
to see how his career plays out.
And then, in Cleveland, he played with Kyrie, but so's Durant. So,
that Kyrie now is better than that Kyrie.
Absolutely.
And Kevin Love.
Kevin Love, is Kevin Love better than Klay Thompson? I don't think so.
No, Durant's played with better players, unquestionably. I don't know how you could debate it. And everybody who's listening knows I'm not a LeBron guy. It's not even close.
No, it's like saying Jordan played with better. Like Jordan played with Pippen and Rodman. Yeah, and then Horace Grant was good, and but yeah, I mean that's where people give the edge to Jordan over everyone because he didn't necessarily play with the great players, but I also think the league was weaker then. You could
Durant might have the greatest collection of teammates there's ever been in terms of when he played with them in their prime. I mean, it's crazy.
Prime. And we're not talking about role players, Jeff. We're talking about superstars, right? And that's part of the greatness of Durant, though. He can make it work.
3 MVPs, Sam.
But the one thing that I'll give Kevin Durant is he knows how to play with other great players. That's a pretty good skill set to have. Not everybody's the same. I think he's a good teammate on the court and off the court, unless you're Russell Westbrook, who he despises, obviously. And I loved your tweet when you said next time Russ plays him, he's going to go for like 40, 20, and 20.
Yeah, he's going to go bananas. He'll take 60 shots. Yeah, he'll go. But the stat line's going to be insane.
Just get out of his way. Now, they don't play again the rest of the
Durant will season. They'll draw 4 charges on him. But the numbers are going to be great.
Somehow, yeah. He'll go like 17 for 54, with some threes thrown in. He'll go to the foul line. But
he's been playing out of his mind recently, by the way.
He
Westbrook
has been. Look,
he's going bananas.
He's a guy who gives you max effort. It's not always sometimes misguided, but he is a whirling dervish out there. Here's a scenario. Washington's right on the edge of getting into that play-in tournament. If they could ever somehow get in and play Brooklyn in the first round of the playoffs, how fun would that be? I mean, it'd be a 4-game sweep, but take that back. Washington would win 1 game because Bradley Beal would go nuts and Westbrook would just be like out of control. That would be an interesting first-round series, considering that, one team would be a huge favorite over the other. It'd still be entertaining.
Yeah, there's no reason Washington should be as bad as they are this year.
No.
Having those 2 guys in the backcourt, I mean, they should be a lot better than they are. And yeah, I mean, it would be very fun to see Westbrook go up against Durant in the playoffs.
That'd be great.
It would be a blast. Yeah, it would be a blast. They're right now they are 23-33. That puts them about let's see, they're 16 back total. They're 3 back of Indiana for that 9 spot.
Right. And they're with Chicago for number 10.
Right with Chicago, So they're in the mix. They're in the mix.
We're rooting for Washington to get the 10 spot over Chicago. And then, again, depending on how everything plays out. But that would be a fantastic series.
Yeah, no one wants to see Chicago. They're boring. No. Who cares? Zach LaVine's going to score a lot, and they'll lose. They'll get swept. I mean, we could see
Russell Westbrook go nuts, and it'd be more entertaining.
Yeah. But yeah, Durant. I tend to agree with you that he did it on purpose. It's hard to imagine he remembered playing with Ibaka in Oklahoma City, but not Westbrook. I don't know how that just slips your mind. That seems hard to believe. But we'll see. And as I said, if you play DraftKings or anything like that, look up the next time that the Wizards play the Nets, because you'll want to put Westbrook on your team on that night. He will.
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't. It's not scheduled the rest of the year. I did check that out when you made that tweet. So you put out those great tweets, and I'm like, well, let me make sure they're playing each other.
Party pooper.
And that wasn't the case. I'm a party pooper because that would be fantastic. There would be a fist fight on the court. That would be. I mean, and you know what?
Because he heard that, right? Westbrook knows.
Of course. Westbrook would make Durant, Harden, and Kyrie Irving. Yeah, he would make all 3 of those guys shit their pants. They'd probably all be frightened of Westbrook because Westbrook's, unhinged.
Intense.
Intense. Yeah, he's like, he should be a stage actor. Like he just, he pops. That would be fantastic. Let's root for that.
All right, we'll root for that. Meanwhile, Sap, there's some news out west. We've been focused on the Nets and the Wizards, talking about the Eastern Conference. In the Western Conference, the team that currently owns the best record in the NBA is still Utah Jazz, so that doesn't look like it's going to last for that much longer because they've got some injuries to deal with, and Phoenix is right on their tails. But the Utah Jazz have a new owner, somebody you actually just mentioned, Sap, and it's not LeBron James, it's Dwyane Wade. He buys a stake into the Utah Jazz. I'm assuming the only time he's ever been to Utah is when he's had to play there, unless he's a big skier. And so what we know is by the bylaws of the NBA or of the Jazz, it has to be more than 1%.
At least 1%, right.
But we don't know exactly how much. Maybe we'll find out right after we finish this podcast. But as of now, we know that he owns at least 1% of the Utah Jazz, traditionally looked at as one of the most odd spots for a sports team, for an NBA team, Utah. They're the only game in town. Dwyane Wade, you think Miami, you don't think Utah. But lo and behold, he owns part of the Jazz, Sap, just as Shaq owns part of the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, and Grant Hill's a minority owner of the Atlanta Hawks, and we do think that LeBron's going to be more than a minority owner or a small stakeholder in a future team. Apparently, Dwyane Wade struck a friendship with Ryan Smith, who's the new owner of the Utah Jazz, bought the team about 6 months ago for $1.66 billion. And he's a really big guy in tech. He's 40 years old. So he's around the same age as Dwyane Wade. They met on a golf course, and they just struck up a friendship. And I think Wade wants to look at Ryan Smith and see what he can offer him in terms of building his next career. So it's kind of an odd fit. From the perspective is you don't think of Utah being in Salt Lake City is a weird fit, and just their nickname, the Jazz. There's no Jazz in Salt Lake City.
No, it's a very white and Mormon city.
Yeah, and a lot of black players have had problems there. I remember Westbrook had some issues there a couple of years ago where fans were going at him. I'm sure the N-word was thrown around pretty loosely in Utah with many black players in the NBA. So it does seem like an odd fit. And again, he doesn't have to be there often. I believe he lives in Southern California now, so L.A. to Salt Lake City is not that big.
He's got a house in Miami, house in L.A. He's got a house in both places.
Who doesn't? So
that's right.
It's probably an hour plane ride from L.A. to Salt Lake City, so he can go there, sit on the sideline. And I think what a lot of these players can be is recruiting tools, perhaps. So we know Donovan Mitchell, he's
not recruiting anybody at Utah, Seth.
That's going to be a tough one. I get it. It's a lot easier I'll tell you what, Pat Riley can recruit people to Miami easier than Dwyane Wade will recruit players to Salt Lake City. And Riley's one of the greatest recruiters in the history of the league. He's got that cachet. But good for him. I mean, if it's 1%, that means it's about a $17 million investment, which, makes sense. Maybe it's 2%. So that's $34 million. Do the math. Good for him.
What's the end game here, Sap? Is this a cachet thing? I own part of an NBA team, or do you think it's him wanting to genuinely take part in the day-to-day stuff of owning an NBA team?
Again, that's something that a lot of former players don't want to do, because that's we saw Magic Johnson try to do that with the Lakers, and it just wasn't for him because Magic's got a lot of interest, and I think Dwyane Wade has a lot of interest. I think Dwyane Wade also does a lot of TNT, which maybe he can't do now as an owner, although Shaq is a superstar on TNT and he owns part of the Sacramento Kings, and Grant Hill you like a lot as a commentator, especially in college basketball, but he also does NBA games and is part owner of the Hawks. So the NBA is not as strict as, say, some other sports where you own 1% of a team, you can't be on TNT. I don't think they really care.
Shaq didn't even know that. He didn't know that Hassan Whiteside was on the Kings the other day. He owns part of the Kings. So, I mean, that's how awesome. Seriously he takes it. He had no clue.
It's you know what? It's like, how much is this going to cost? $20 million. Here's a check, and I can put on my bio, part owner of the Sacramento Kings, Utah Jazz, Atlanta Hawks. We know Aaron Rodgers owns, I believe, 1% of the Milwaukee Bucks. That's cross-sport ownership there. And A-Rod, of course, as we talked about last week, is close to sealing the deal to be the front man at least, but I think with some financial commitment in owning the Minnesota Timberwolves. So it just seemed like an odd fit because I think that Mickey Aronson, the owner of the Heat, had talked to Dwyane Wade about potentially getting involved with the organization. But maybe at this point, Pat Riley's a turnoff for that type of situation because Riley runs the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I don't know what their relationship is, Wade and Riley.
Right. And whereas now Dwyane Wade, he's got the ear of the owner because, Ryan Smith and he have really bonded. And I'm sure they're both young guys. They, like to golf together, cooler, hip young guys, rather than dealing with Pat Riley, who's 75, or Mickey Aronson, who I believe is even older, the owner, although it is the Miami Heat, which is a marquee franchise. But good for D Wade. I think he's an easy guy to root for, although I do think as a player,
dirty.
He was dirty. Yeah, he was a dirty player. I'll never forget he broke Kobe Bryant's nose in an All-Star game, and he picked the right guy.
He pulled Rajon Rondo's arm out of its socket.
Yeah, dirty player. And as far as breaking Kobe Bryant's nose, he picked the right guy to do that to because Kobe probably embraced it. Like Kobe and Michael Jordan are probably the two players in NBA history that would embrace having their noses broken. It was like, I'm even tougher than you think. So, yeah. Westbrook's another guy. Right, exactly. Westbrook would be, yeah. Although Westbrook's a good-looking dude. I tell you, he's a fashionista. I don't think he wants anybody breaking that nose. He's a good-looking guy.
He's had his nose broken before, I think. He's worn the mask before.
Yeah, he's a whirling dervish out there. Kamikaze himself.
Yeah, so it does seem like a weird fit. You think of Utah as like the outpost of the NBA, them and Oklahoma City.
Pretty much,
and you think of Wade as Mr. Miami. I mean, really, completely Mr. Miami. He's got a wife who's an actress. Gabrielle Union is. So it does seem like a weird fit, but I guess if you have the opportunity to buy in on the ground level, which I mean, ground level being $17 million minimum, that's a nice ground level. Then I guess you take it. What his role will be with the team, maybe he'll show up to like a couple games this season. I can't see him
ambassador.
I don't know. If you're you just bought the team, you're hiring a GM. The GM isn't going to want Dwyane Wade's opinion on what to do here.
No,
and it's like Wade's not going to live in Utah or buy a home in Utah. So I think he's invested in it, like you said. For the bio,
maybe the guy likes to ski.
Yeah, that's what I said. Maybe he likes to ski or snowboard. That's the only
thing I can think of.
Not a lot of good skiing in Miami, so I doubt he knows how.
Where's better to live than Miami or LA? I mean, everybody in the NBA, those are their two favorite cities, right? Everybody connected to the NBA talks about Miami and LA. I mean, Stephen A. Smith just was, so pissed off last year during the finals because it was held in a bubble. Whereas, in a normal year, Miami, LA in the finals, you'd be going back and forth. He'd be in heaven. So Yeah, it is kind of an odd fit, but good for him. And maybe there's something down the road. But Ryan Smith, the owner, is barely 40, so I don't think he's going
That's
anywhere.
crazy.
It's not like
crazy
an old
to
guy.
have that much money at that age.
Yeah, it really is, or any age. But he's a high tech guy.
Yeah, I mean, most of the NBA guys owners are tech guys.
It's new money. It's new money.
Yeah.
It's not like the Mara family or the Rooney family in football, which comes from old money. These guys are all like Mark Cuban.
The NFL is oil money. This is tech money.
That's why the owners they bond better with the players. Could you picture NBA players trying to bond with NFL owners? Like, that would not work. I mean, other than Robert Kraft, who wants to drop a mixtape at some point, most NFL owners are kind of these old white guys.
What Russell Westbrook wears to the game would give one of the Maras a heart attack, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's wearing shorts and an
open blazer.
Yeah, what's up with that? LeBron was wearing shorts with a
Elmer Fudd hat. That's what LeBron was wearing at the last game,
LeBron did look a little odd on the sideline over the weekend. That's for sure.
He's ready to chop wood is what he looked like. Yeah. He was ready to go to in Utah. Maybe
maybe that's the team he buys at some point. Although I don't think Utah's on board having a 40-year-old owner.
Yeah. So what team is LeBron going to buy, Sap? That begs the question, right? He's the next logical guy to be the Michael Jordan who buys larger than a 50% share of a team, because he's the only player right now that's going to have the financial wherewithal to do that. Not that these guys aren't making crazy money, but the teams, we just saw last week, we talked about the Timberwolves just sold for $1.5 billion. I mean, that's the Timberwolves.
And that's the Timberwolves, the Jazz, $1.66 billion. The Celtics probably go for between $2.5 and $3 billion. They don't even own their own building. The Knicks are the highest valued franchise in the NBA at a little over $4 billion. Cleveland makes the most sense, but I don't think there's any way in hell Dan Gilbert sells the Cleveland Cavaliers to LeBron James. It's not going to happen. He's got enough money, Dan Gilbert, that he can be spiteful and not do it. I would always think that Dan Gilbert wants to buy the Detroit Tigers. So maybe that's the move where he sells the Cavaliers and buys the Tigers, but I don't think he's going to sell it to LeBron James. It's not going to happen. I think LeBron could get a franchise in Vegas.
I know what team he's going to buy, Sap. So if you want the answer, I got it for you.
Well, he owns 2% of Fenway Sports Group.
No, not that team. He's not buying the Celtics.
So, you do notice that since he bought into Fenway Sports Group and now the Boston Red Sox, they have the best record in the American League. I just want to bring that up.
He's got a great baseball mind.
He's got a great baseball mind. I mean, he's straightened out the pitching staff in the early going. LeBron.
If you bought the Celtics, fans would throw
that would not go well. Does he get an expansion franchise in Seattle
he's going to buy
Vegas?
He's going to buy the Portland Trail Blazers. I'm going to explain to you why right now, Sam.
Oh, okay.
Nike is headquartered right outside of Portland, Beaverton, Oregon. For those of you who don't know your Oregon geography, that is literally right outside of Portland. It is a very quick car ride, about 15 to 20 minutes. And they have their beautiful Nike campus, all that stuff. LeBron is Mr. Nike. And has a lifetime deal with them. He's going to be making money off his shoes well into retirement, just like Michael Jordan has. Those lifetime deals just continue to pay out. So he's got business interests there. Mm-hmm. The owner of the Blazers right now is Jody Allen, sister of the late Paul Allen, who died a few years ago. She doesn't really have a huge investment in the Blazers. She lives in Seattle. She's more invested in the Seahawks, which she also owns. And so I could see her selling the franchise to LeBron, and he's not going to be able to buy it outright. I don't think. No,
he's approaching billionaire status, and maybe by the time he retires, he's worth $1.5 billion. But he's not going to take every penny he has and buy an NBA franchise. Maybe he buys 51% controlling interest. And look, these guys go to banks and get money. They don't have to go to their piggy bank and try to make the deal happen. That's a great point, Jet. In fact, such a great point that I'm probably going to steal it and write a column about it. Thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Just little plagiarism here.
Only the 20th column I provided for you, Seth. But that's where I see it. The Nike connection. It's a good franchise that's been consistently good. He brings more. I think you can recruit free agents to Portland because it's a cool city. He would certainly help with that. He would elevate Portland from being a cool, under the radar city to, hey, LeBron James owns this team. And he could maintain living in LA if he wants to. It's only a 2.5, 3 hour plane ride. It's not that far. I think Portland fans would embrace it because it's not like he's been an enemy to the Blazers by any stretch. And if he were to say, "Hey, we're keeping the team in Portland. I have a big connection to Nike," all the better. And I don't think the NBA would want the Blazers to move. They have a great fan base.
No.
And again, Nike being there is a big deal. It's a strong connection, branding connection. So that if I had to pick any team that's not an expansion team, that's how I see it. I don't think the ownership group really cares one way or the other, and I could see him buying into it.
That I can't disagree with one thing you said, Jet, and that pains me to say that. But no, I think that makes the most sense. In fact, when he was leaving Cleveland in 2018, we all knew he was going to go to the Lakers. But I always would bring up Portland because of the Nike connection. And you had Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum, and LeBron can fit in with pretty much anyone.
He wouldn't want a title there if he had just signed there outright with those two guys. He would have won a title.
I think so, yeah. But he wanted LA.
Yeah, no, he did.
For more than just basketball. So, yeah, they would have been certainly a favorite to win a title. I think they would have. Imagine Lillard, McCollum, and LeBron together. Just think of Lillard and LeBron
the shooting.
together.
That's how you surround him with shooters and you win, typically.
Talking about maybe the second best shooter in the league, right? And Dame Lillard behind Steph Curry. So
McCollum's probably a top 15 shooter.
Great shooter, yeah. And now all of a sudden you're going to start recruiting some, veterans that would want to play there. But I thought that was kind of a sneaky option for LeBron back in 2018, but we knew it was going to be the Lakers. The one good thing that Magic Johnson was able to pull off, although, the Lakers recruit themselves. It's Los Angeles. So, yeah, I cannot disagree with one word that you said there. That makes the most sense because there's not a lot of franchises that are going to be up for sale. It's not like
you
the
said,
Dolans are going to sell the Knicks or anything like that.
Cleveland would be his top choice,
sure,
because that's where he's from and that's where he made his legacy. But he's not going to sell to him. No, he's not going to. So you have to go look and approach somebody who might be willing to sell it. I do think you have to look at who the owners who are most likely to sell. Either they're near death and they don't have anybody to pass it to,
right?
Like Glenn Taylor, or they're just really ready to cash in. Or they're not that emotionally attached to the team. And she didn't even buy the team in the first place, Paula. And he didn't have any kids. She was the next of kin, so it just went to her. She has no emotional connection to the team. No. So, I think that it's a logical one. Maybe that's where his son ends up playing and he buys the team his son plays for.
And how would this work? If she wants to still stay in the NBA, this is getting really complicated. Maybe she has the option to buy the expansion franchise in Seattle if Seattle gets an expansion franchise. Yeah. So now she'd have the Seahawks, the Seattle, whoever in the NBA, and then LeBron ends up with Portland. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, sir.
I think you need to tweet that out to LeBron and see if he responds. If it was Kevin Durant, he would respond.
Yeah, he'd get mad. He said, the Blazers are buying the Knicks. What are you talking about? Don't cheat me out.
Durant would say they had an opportunity to draft me in 2007. They took Odin instead of me, so I hold that against them.
I maintain that
maybe that's the case.
The right pick, good pick, Greg Oden.
Everyone thought that at the time. I remember the Celtics in that draft lottery, and everyone felt they were going to win it. They had a great chance, or if not the best chance, they were pretty darn close to it. And when it didn't happen, it was like, when it didn't happen is, Greg Oden's not coming here, and he's going to be the next Bill Russell. I mean, that's what everyone thought. I mean, Durant was a pretty good consolation prize, but no one thought Kevin Durant was going to be this great. I mean, Skip Bayless talks about how he claims he knew he was going to become a top 20 player. You don't know that when anyone leaves 1 year of college or high school. Like, as much as I was confident in 2003 that LeBron was going to be a great player, I didn't think he was going to turn out to be this great. I mean,
no one did. You can't prognosticate that high.
No, because
for everybody that you nail, you'd also flop 3 times over on those guesses.
Yeah, so. I mean, obviously.
So we'll have Dwyane Wade in Utah and LeBron in Portland, and that will be the ownership rivalry of the 2040s, Sap.
That could be, yeah, absolutely. And then you got, Grant Hill in Atlanta and Shaq not even knowing who plays on the Sacramento Kings.
No, he doesn't.
That's awesome.
It was hilarious.
That's perfect.
No idea.
We got to get Barkley to buy a franchise. I mean, the only problem with Barkley is I think he's lost a lot of money gambling. He may not. Money.
And he would quickly get himself out of the Hall of Fame for gambling on his own team.
get him the expansion franchise in Vegas.
Yeah.
Barkley
that would
in
be a
Vegas.
disaster. He can't live in Vegas. He would lose all of his money.
No. Well, Paul Pierce can, because Paul Pierce is no longer with ESPN. So maybe a Pierce, Chris Webber, Charles Barkley trio could buy the expansion franchise.
He's going to buy Vegas. A topless basketball league is what Paul Pierce is going to start. So that's what I think is going on. He'll be the first owner of a topless basketball team.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, you are very welcome for all the great column ideas I always give you. And those exact columns that start as a nugget, a crystal of an idea on the show, you can see fully fleshed out on fullpresscoverage.com, as well as other great podcasts. And you can catch our podcasts anywhere podcasts are found. You can download us on iTunes. Just search our name. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/JetStryer. Remember to give a thumbs up and a like, and let us know what you think. What do you think? Is LeBron going to buy the Blazers? Yes, that's the answer. He is. I'm calling my shot. But if you think he's going to buy another team wrongly, you can say that too. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. We'd love to hear from you on Twitter at JohnSap25, at JetStryer. We will be back with another podcast in the next day or so. So make sure to stay on the lookout for that. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. See ya.